learners, how are you all? I want to welcome to another lesson of this course, which is primary water treatment. The primary water treatment occurs just after the preliminary water treatment. So there are a lots of ways by which we can do this primary water treatment, and we are gonna discuss about this. So first of all, in primary water treatment, there is coagulation and flocculation. There is primary sedimentation, pre-chlorination and dechlorination, and filtration. Also, there is disinfection. So if we come to the first point, which is coagulation, so coagulation is basically a process which actually adds the salt that produce positive ions in water, positive or plus ions in water. It is basically rapid mixing which leads to destabilization of colloids. So the colloids that actually the dirts are basically negative in charge, and the salts that we put in coagulation are positive ions. I'm going to show you in this picture. Here we can see that the colloid particles are basically negatives and they repel each other. We all know that the same kinds of particles or same kind of charge or ions repel each other, and the different kinds of particles or charge attract each other. So the colloid negative colloid particles repel each other, and if we put a positive coagulant, a positively charged coagulant, then it actually attracts the coagulant particles as they are differently charged, and then they reacts together and creates a neutral particle. So coagulants that generally we use are iron sulfate, ferrous sulfate, and aluminium sulfate. What we do with the coagulants or neutral coagulants, the neutral coagulants actually they form a very gelatinous precipitate which can settle very slowly and which is incorporated to the colloidal particles. As they settle very slowly, it is really important for the dirts to get out from the water. So after coagulation, we do the flocculation. Flocculation means to create flocks. Basically, it is a process of gentle and continuous stirring of the micro flocks that we get from the coagulation process. Larger flocks are good with settling characteristics because larger flocks have large or bigger weights, and that's why they can settle in the water very easily. Here we can see that the particles collide and link together through weak bonds and form big clumps like this, and these clumps are called flocks. So by creating these flocks, flocculation happened. So after flocculation, what process we need is sedimentation. Sedimentation is basically we actually send the flocks to the down of the container. The particles in water that will settle by gravity within a reasonable period of time that can be removed by sedimentation in sedimentation basins, also that is known as clarifiers. So the flocks that we get from the flocculation process, it goes down to the sedimentation basins, and then we can easily remove it. And this sedimentation process actually is done by the gravity. So here we can see that the water from coagulation goes here and create flocks, and then it is settled here. And after that, this water, when the flocks are sedimented below, the water gets more clear and it goes to the filtration. That means the later part of the treatment. So after the sedimentation, as I just mentioned, it goes to filtration. After separating most of the flocks, the water is filtered as the final step to remove remaining suspended particles and unsettled flocks. So the water that we get from sedimentation, here we can see that it goes for filtration. The water basically passes through the filters, some made of layers of sand and some charcoals that helps to remove the smaller, basically the smaller particles that we get in the water or that we get in the dirts. So we actually for filtration we used basically two kind of filter. One is slow sand filter and the other one is rapid sand filter. By the name itself we can already say that the rate of filtration of the slow sand filter is much lower than the rapid sand filter. Here we can see that the rate of filtration of slow sand filter is 0.1 to 0.4 meter cube per meter square per hour, and in case of rapid sand filter it is 5 to 15 meter square per hour. So we can say that it is much higher. So there are lots of differences between these two, but the main is the rate of filtration, and the other one is the removal of bacteria. Here we can see that in case of slow sand filter 99.9 to 99.99% bacteria is removed, and in case of rapid sand filter the rate is much lower. So I guess if we consider the removal of bacteria, slow sand filter is much better. So finally we have come to the disinfection. Disinfection is basically a small amount of chlorine is added or some other disinfection method is used to kill microorganisms, biological microorganisms that can stay in the water. Here we can see that the water from filtration tank goes for the disinfection process. So there are lots of disinfection methods in the large scale, where the water we disinfect the water in a large scale. We use chlorinization, ozone, UV irradiation, and for the smaller scale like we use in the house, we can boil the water, we can use iodine tablets or the water filters that we use in our house. So there are some criteria for satisfactory disinfectant that we use. It should not influence from the properties of water within a short time. Also it should be very cheap so that common people can afford it very easily, and it should not have any residual concentration in the water, so that we can have a very palatable and potable water and we can drink it easily. Chlorination is basically a very easy and common way of disinfecting water, and it is commonly used also in households as well as industries because it is readily available and it is used as gas, liquid or powder. So it is basically used in different ways, like for bleaching powder, chloramines, or as free gas. There are some other disinfection methods like ozone and UV rays. Ozone are basically used in Europe and Canada. It is a strong oxidizing agent. It should be used with chlorination. We cannot use it without chlorination. And if we talk about the UV rays that we get from the sun, it is used in UK, and water should be clear in this case if we want to use this way. There are no residual effect, but the one problem regarding this method is it is a bit expensive.